experience for everybody. But
Hi.
Hello.
So you guys have probably surmised that I am Jay.
Yeah.
You are?
Cassandra Ritchie.
Cassandra.
Laura Palayo.
And Laura. Okay, wonderful. And then, hi Lori. Lori's over there. So I'm going to start with my general spiel, which is not about your group in particular. It's about all, like, sort of, here's why we're having the conferences. And then we'll talk about your plan specifically, all right? So, in the past, I didn't have these conferences scheduled, and then I got the research questions, and I went, oh crap, I gotta talk to people face to face. So this time, I just went ahead and scheduled them in. So setting up a research project, one seems really straightforward, and then is actually quite kind of complicated and complex.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that you've been taught for a very long time what it means to like do research in the academic world. Like you'll be in English 101 and they're like, we're gonna write a research paper or we're gonna do research. And then you come to technical writing, and the kind of research that we're doing here is a little bit different in that we're not doing academic research, we're doing more like workplace or professional research. And so that's just a shift that not everybody has made in their mind, and so I like to be able to talk to people face to face. Sometimes we just need to tweak their questions a little bit, and sometimes we need to scrap their questions completely and start over. Regardless of where your group is, there are no judgments whatsoever about, like, it's just a hard shift for people to make. So I don't, like, if I come in and I'm like, these research questions aren't gonna work, I don't want anyone to feel bad. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to make sure I wanna set you up well so that you can succeed the rest of the quarter. Okay?
I'd rather you tell us like
Yeah.
before we start officially working on it than later when we're like panicking.
Yeah. That being said, it is okay in this process to fail at some things, because when we do real workplace research, sometimes projects fail, right? Someone is doing a survey and nobody responds, or
That would be so bad.
or sometimes they're doing a thing and they need to contact a certain person and they reach out to them 25 times, the person never calls them back, right? Stuff happens. And when you write up your report, you just say, like, it would have been better if we had gotten this, but we didn't get it. Here's why, and then we just move on. Like, here's what we could find out given the time that we had. So it's okay if things fail sometimes. And so a lot of this class will be sort of trying things, and then they fail, and we talk about why they fail, and then we move on and we pick up the pieces, right? That being said, you guys have a really interesting, so talking about vaccines is a really interesting topic. What prevents people from getting the flu vaccine every year is kind of a big question, right? So obviously we've got to drill down a little bit. Before I talk about the specific questions, I want to rewind a little bit. So the thing that really separates academic research from workplace or professional research is that you're writing for a particular reader who's going to do a particular task with that information, right? So we don't write technical reports for the general public. Because do you read technical reports on the weekends?
Not all the time. I mean, I have.
Yeah. Like when I'm surfing the internet, right, I'm not going online and reading a bunch of technical reports. Most people don't, right? So while for academic research, we're looking for the answer to kind of a big question, and we're writing for kind of a general reader, when we're doing technical reports, we tend to be writing for a very specific reader. And as such, our scope tends to be really specific. So we want to imagine ourselves into a situation where a real reader is asking you to do this research, and they're gonna do some kind of task or make some kind of decision based on what you find, right? So for instance, similar to kind of what you guys are talking about, last quarter I had a group where it was just really lucky, but one of the group members was a nurse in an urgent care in Vancouver, and they were getting hit by the measles in Vancouver, right? They had that big outbreak of measles. And so originally they were like, well, let's do a report on like why people don't get vaccines or what, and I'm like, okay, but that's really big. And so we said, what we settled on was the director of nursing trying to make a decision about whether they needed to have more nurses on staff until the outbreak ended, right? So she, kept track of the number of people who came in with potential measles cases. They tracked how long or how much nursing time a measles case took compared to how much time, like the other top 5 reasons that people come into urgent care for. So how much additional nursing time was then needed based on that. So she did a lot of that primary research. Someone else was responsible for bringing in like the background research about measles and why it spreads and how often the things happen. And so like it was for that specific situation, should we add 1 extra nurse or 2 extra nurses or just pay someone some overtime, or like that was the task.
I see.
So I like your idea. Can we relate it to a specific situation or specific task?
Well, I know that it's like, it is super broad, and I kind of thought that was like a good thing because we can cover like a lot of bases, but maybe we can direct it more towards like, I think within our questions, we stated something about making vaccines more accessible to people.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that could be like more of a, like we direct our research and our report towards like healthcare providers, like in a technical writing way, and just make a report about like accessibility for people rather than like the general public, and more towards the healthcare.
Yeah. And so you have this list of questions on the front, and most of them tend to be kind of big, and then when I'm looking at the survey questions that you came up with, it was much more specific and just kind of small. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, well these are fairly measurable questions, right? Like, did you get the vaccine this year? If not, what was the primary reason not? And then you'd probably collect some demographic data so you could kind of say, okay, are there trends in terms of who is or is not getting it? Are there trends in terms of the reasons based on age or where you live or this or that or whatever, right? So that's very doable, and I could see, a local community health organization wanting to know that information so they know who to reach out to with their literature campaign about the importance of vaccines, right? Or, do we really need to focus on advertising, or do we focus on getting more free flu shots to different locations, or, do we try to just educate the senior citizens, or, right? So that kind of information about which group is not getting the vaccine, and does there seem to be a clear reason why? Like, that's a doable kind of question. Versus something like, why do viruses develop resistances to medication?
Oh,
you can't do that in 3 weeks, right? How can we educate people so they make it informed? That's huge. What people are you talking about? What those are really big questions. But in long view, which demographics are not getting the flu vaccine as frequently as other demographics, that's a doable question. Do you see how that works?
Yeah, that's some good advice, actually. Yeah, I added that because when we were discussing like our potential questions, it was like, that was something that kind of like interested me, because I'm like, oh, well, how do things like kind of develop resistances and all that stuff? But you're right, it probably is a little...
It's okay, I'm sure I put some questions there that were kind of out there too, because I asked like how many people are, as well, like every year aren't getting it. It's going to be a big number.
Right, yeah. And I mean, some of this might come into play in your background research, right? So while your primary research might focus on, surveying people about whether or not they got the flu shot, Your background research might include like what's the national average, what's the Washington state average, how does our survey population stack up to that, why does, some background on why the CDC recommends you get a flu shot, how do flu shots actually work, right? All of that might go into a background section or a comparison section, right? So your report isn't gonna just be, here's our research. It's gonna be sort of like, here's why the issue matters, here's what you need to know before you read the research, here's what we did, here's what we found, here's what we found means, right? So you're gonna have these multiple sections as well.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty good actually.
So the primary research then will be like which group is mostly not getting the vaccines, demographics, like one demographic versus other demographics, and how can this like health facility accommodate that for people that, like if it's senior people, like how can we educate them that it still matters for them, in their age.
I wouldn't go there.
No?
I would just stop at who's not getting it, why are they not getting it?
Okay, who's not getting
Right.
it?
Because in order to be able to actually find the answer to what's the best method to educate those people, you have to try educating them with
Yeah.
multiple methods and see which one produces the most results. You don't have time to do that. So you're just answering the first question, and then the education team is gonna take on the second question.
Okay.
And then once they find their answer, then the marketing team is gonna pick, right?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so you're just doing question one. Who's not getting the vaccine? Why are they not getting it?
Yeah.
Okay, then we can do others. We can't do that other stuff till we find the answer to this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the second phase of the project. Yeah?
Okay, yeah.
Cool. So doing survey research, some things we've got to think about. One, how are you going to distribute this survey? How are you going to get people to take it?
Well, I don't really have like too much of a presence on social media, but
Mhm.
I'm sure that like if there are like research that could just be posted on like some Facebooks or
Mhm.
other medias that people could just kind of like, oh, well, I don't take it because I don't get vaccines because
Right.
I don't have time for it, or I'm afraid of needles, or
So then basically you're just going to be tapping into your own personal social networks.
yeah, that is a bit of a
I
hang up
think,
there.
yeah, I think Lori said something about creating like an online survey, but I
Mhm.
think Lori also works like in the health field.
Yeah,
She works in I don't know, senior center or.
yeah, she's definitely within she's studying to be like a nurse. So.
Right. So if she has a particular population that she wants to work with, that she has access to, then maybe she can distribute to that particular population. And then, of course, that might then change your research question might not be which population is not getting it. It might be within this particular population, why are they not getting it? That might be, you might be focusing more on that. Because if you're just looking at one demographic,
Yeah.
then you're not asking which demographic, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We could
And
always-
that's okay,
Mhm.
right? Just because maybe if she works with an organization, they don't want to know which demographic. They're like, we have this demographic. What we want to know is why aren't they,
Mhm.
right? So that can be okay, but discuss it a little bit, because how you distribute changes both your question and what kind of expectations you have in terms of getting surveys back.
Would it be okay if we did it like on campus, to ask people on campus, or?
So you can, right?
But that's where we have to get the thing approved.
Well, you have to get it approved regardless. If
Regardless,
if you're asking other human beings to share information with you, you have to get it approved through the
Okay.
ethics board. Right?
And what does that entail? Like, how do we get something approved?
So the application is very short. It's like one page. It's like describe your project. So we'll just write up a little description of the project. But then if it's a survey, they generally want the survey they want to see what the questions are. They want to see how they're worded. Because slight changes to wording and survey questions can dramatically skew the answers you get, and also can make things more or less risky for people, right? So exactly which demographic info you collect changes how risky the survey is, because it changes how personal of information you're asking them to share, that sort of thing.
Makes sense.
So what I will want you to do is figure out what your exact question is, write your survey questions, write just a little short blurb about how you're planning to distribute it, and send it to me. And let me kind of do an initial check over, because I'm not an expert, but you know, I mean, I know a little bit about like what will flag, right? So I'll kind of look, and what will give you bad answers and that sort of thing. So look it over, I'll give you some suggestions, you'll maybe do some revisions, and then I'll have you send the revised version to me, I'll send it over to IRB. Sometimes it can take as little as 3 to 4 days to get it back. Sometimes it can take 1 to 2 weeks to get it back. I do want you to be aware of that. That depends on how busy they are, right? Because it's humans who are looking at this. So hopefully you'll get it back within about a week. And then you can do your research. So it might skew your timeline for your formal proposal. It asks you to make a timeline plan. You might plan on it taking a little bit longer to get the IRB approval back. And then, you know, if you get it back sooner, great, we're ahead of schedule. But if not, we've already thought about, you know, what are we gonna do, and what do we do in the meantime while we're waiting, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we'll edit that around as needed, so.
Yeah. I am perfectly fine with you guys taking an extension on the formal proposal, because if you wanna work on the survey right now and like do that process of getting the survey questions down, because I'm approving your project, you still have to write the proposal, because there are elements, you know, one, it's an assignment, you need a grade on it, 2, there are elements for you guys like planning the timeline and stuff. You don't need to like wait for me to, I don't need to see the formal proposal before I approve it. You'll be approved after today. But yeah, so instead of like trying to get the proposal done this week and then work on the survey next week, you might get your survey questions done now so we can get it to IRB sooner, and then do your formal proposal next week. It's up to you guys how you want to do it. But go away, think about those things, shoot me like a draft of your questions and potential answers, and then maybe just say, here's when we'd like to turn our formal proposal in.
Will we have to meet when we want to turn in that proposal again?
No, you just submit it through the Dropbox, yeah. And it'll say, and I'll extend how late it's open, and it'll say that it's late when you submit it, and just in the comment box say, hey, you said that we could have these extra time, and I won't give you a penalty.
Okay.
Right. Now that we're into project phase, you can always change or negotiate any deadline you need if it will make your project work better.
Okay.
Right.
That's good to know.
Like, yeah, I'm really just as long as you tell me ahead of time.
Yeah.
Hey, we want to do our proposal next week instead of this week. Fine, right? But if I don't know, then I'm like, you didn't do this assignment. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the timeline that you want in our proposal, is that gonna be based on the assignments that we're turning in, like when they should be turned in, or how we're conducting our research?
More about what your team is doing, right?
Okay.
So, not this week, because people are supposed to be turning in their proposal this week, but starting at the end of week 4, like you do a weekly update every Sunday, which basically just says, this is what we plan to get done this week, this is what we actually got done, this is what we're gonna do next week, right? It's just like, here's how things are going. You don't have to put the weekly updates in your timeline on your proposal, because they're just updates, you just do them. But I wanna know, like, generally, when do you plan on having your background research done? When do you think you're gonna start distributing your survey? When are you gonna stop collecting responses on your survey? How long are you going to give your team to analyze the results? How long will the writing take? How much time are you giving yourselves for reviewing? What I found is that most teams, because you have like 5 weeks to get this whole thing done, right? And they spend 4 weeks doing their research and really not necessarily getting a whole lot done, and then they think they're gonna write the whole thing in like 4 days, and they realize
Yeah,
that,
it's like 10 pages, right?
yeah, that it's kind of lengthy, and it's different than what they're used to, so they often have to do a little bit, and realize that doesn't work, and then go back and reorganize it differently, and then realize that kind of works, but they need to, right? So you're, and as a group instead of an individual, you're gonna need more time for that writing and reviewing and organizing process than you think. So like, what can you start writing after week 1? And what can you not start doing until you get to week 10? So it's really more for you guys than it is for me. But then also around week 7 or 8, I don't remember exactly, you're gonna write a progress report. It says, here's how we're doing. And I'm gonna want you to look back at that proposal and say, here's where we thought we would be, here's where we actually are, right? And a lot of people are like, we're doing great, we're gonna meet the deadline. And I'm like, yeah, but you said you would have these 5 things done and you've only done 1 of them. So I know you're optimistic you're gonna meet the deadline, that's fine, but you can't say you're on track when clearly you're not, right? So like, if you're not on track, that doesn't mean you're gonna get a bad progress report. You're gonna get a bad progress report if you say you're on track when I can see you're clearly not, right? Because ethically, that's not what progress reports are supposed to do. That's lying to the client. Right, so also part of the proposal and the timeline is to give you something to measure your progress against so you can write a progress report.
Okay, that sounds
Does
good.
that answer the question?
Yeah.
Good. Other things?
I kind of scribbled. I understand my handwriting. I know it's kind of like.
Oh no, you're just.
But there are 6 things that we do need to have in our proposal. I guess we're gonna ask Lori first what kind of clinic she works in. I can't remember if it's
Yeah,
a
so
clinic or
definitely
not.
you're gonna talk to, like, nothing is finalized when you leave here today, because you gotta confer. Hi. Oh, it went away. It stopped recording after 22 minutes.
I can't
Oh,
believe
no.
it. After 22 minutes, has it been 22 minutes?
Not much longer than 22 minutes, so I think we're okay. I think it just happened to.
Oh, there's some
I'm
secret-
sorry, there might have been a
secret
gap.
information that
Right.
you missed out on.
Yeah. So anything you feel like you missed out on, these two will fill you in.
For sure.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. So what now?
So first we need to clarify Lori if she's going to be able to take that survey and if she has a diverse demographic, or if it's not a diverse demographic, then the people that are not getting the flu shot, what's the reason that's stopping them?
Yeah.
If it is, then which one, which group,
Then
and
you
then
want to
why?
find out, more of that demographic information.
If she is not, if we can't do the clinic with her, then are we gonna go like the online survey route or on campus, or is that?
I was just wondering, like, what if we did both the campus and Lori's where she works? Like,
Yeah.
maybe we can just do both and maybe like compare and contrast, maybe, like, because
You
it's very
could-
different.
You could, yeah, if you're doing a
Assume.
compare and contrast, you can do that. You don't want to merge that information though,
No.
right? Because it's very different. And that might change who you think about as your reader and the potential question, right? So like the student nurses organization, they give out free flu shots on campus this year, or not this year, every year in the fall, they give out free flu shots. So, they might have they might want to know how the campus population compares to whatever this particular population is that Lori works with, because they want to know, are students more likely or less likely than the average whatever to get the flu shot, or maybe Lori's organization wants to know if her population is remarkably different than a more educated population because they're college students and they have access and blah blah. So just again, any change you make to one part then kind of influences and small changes can make a big difference in the actual writing of the report, right? So if you're changing how you distribute, then ask yourself, well, if that's how we're distributing and that's our demographic and that's who we're asking, who would actually want to know about those groups? That changes who our reader is, and who our reader is changes how we present the information, what the actual questions we're trying to answer. So just think about all those little domino effects.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong answer. You just gotta think about it and make decisions.
So our reader is definitely like the like professional people. So I mean, so having both of those, I feel like maybe might be helpful for
Yeah.
both. Yeah, both
Could
demographics.
be.
Yeah, for sure, because if you work in a health facility, you're assuming that everyone there would care about their health, or someone is taking
Right.
care of them, So
Yeah.
if they're still choosing not to, what's the reason
That
behind
could be very different, yeah, totally. And then if you're thinking about doing both demographics, or both groups, two different ways of distributing, if one falls through, you've still got the other one,
Mhm.
Yeah,
so.
that's
I
true.
mean,
So when we come up with our survey questions,
sorry, one thing I'm concerned about, depending on what kind of like if she works in a nursing home or something, there are certain groups that tend to be what they call like protected groups. It's harder to do human research, like under 18s. Several people wanted to do things where they interviewed like high school students, and I'm like, no. You just like, you're just kind of not allowed. You have to have special training to work with that. If it's a nursing home or something, that might be a protected group.
okay.
So,
But we could definitely fall back on the campus.
right, yeah, and certainly if you send it off to IRB as both groups, and then we could add a note that says like, if not approved to do this group, can we get approved to just do the one group, right?
If we do the two groups, we have to send two separate survey
No,
proposals, or
it'll be
just
one
Okay.
proposal, but rather than sending the proposal for, we wanna do these two groups, and then they kick it back and they say, no, because this group is protected. If we say, we wanna do these two groups, but if we can't do both groups, we'll just do campus, right? That way you don't have to do the send, receive,
Okay,
receive.
yeah.
You can just do it one time.
Okay.
And once we
Here's
do
our
have,
fallback plan.
Oh, it stopped recording.
Ah, sorry, batteries.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Once we do have those survey questions, though, just email them to you.
Email them to me and I'll give you an initial set of feedback on them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you'll fill out the form for us, you said, or are we filling out?
I'll send you the form is literally like, it says, describe your project.
Okay.
And there's like some lines, and then it just needs signatures. So it will have to come to me after it's all filled out, because I gotta sign off on it before we send it to IRB.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm gonna have you guys describe your project.
Okay. Yeah.
Great, sounds good. So, can we expect that like maybe later today or
The
something?
form?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually on the website that I've got linked, the IRB, but I can email it to you, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I could just find the link and
You
send
can-
it there.
If I forget to send it to you, you can find it, right? Because there's the link to the IRB, it says this is what it is.
Is that
Somewhere on
like
there it's
the-
like, here's the,
Unit 2-week stuff? Information?
yeah.
Somewhere in there?
It's in the Unit 3 stuff,
Unit 3,
yeah.
okay.
Because that's the one you're working on right now. It's
If
in
you
there.
want, like after we're done
Um,
here, I can kind of type this up in the email, so that way Lori can respond and let us know what place she works in. And
Yeah.
if I find the form, I'll attach it to that email.
But you're the last group, so I'm gonna go to my office right after this.
Okay.
So I can email it to you.
Okay.
Email IRB form. Yeah, I'll do, I won't forget. If I had 3 more conferences, I would forget. But you're the last one today, so I won't forget.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds good.
so for sure then, this week we might not be able to submit our proposal.
Which is fine.
So should we start doing other things this week, do you think, or like the background research, or,
Oh, if you want to.
okay,
I mean, it's up to you. I let my groups work pretty independently, right? So I've kind of set up, here's an estimate of what I think your timeline should be. And yours, of course, will be a little, doing surveys is gonna be a little bit different, So what do you guys think your timeline should be? What works for you? You get to set your own timelines. I'm not You know, basically, so when you go to Unit 4, right, which is the research project, it covers weeks, what is next week, 4? It covers weeks 4 through 9, is one unit. So everything in there is squishy. You guys just kind of decide how and when you want to do things. And then every week there's a different set of like reading quizzes I'm going to want you to do, or, but that's mostly just to make sure that you're kind of reading about the processes you need to do. But if you want to jump ahead and do a bunch of those, or you want to read everything in the textbook in 1 week, more power to you. Read the whole textbook.
Okay, no problem.
It's just kind of
The way we want to organize
so
ourselves,
yeah,
for sure.
I let you guys be. I'm not gonna be checking over your shoulder every single day and saying, "Now have you done this? Now have you done that?" Be
Right.
professionals, organize yourselves. Yeah, but let me know if you feel like
We're not sure what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
And the video, how will we send that to Lori, or will?
So I think I can post it on your Canvas group homepage where I posted the memos.
Oh, okay.
Did you find
Yeah,
those?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I should be able to post it on there somewhere. If I can't, I'll put it as a private YouTube and send you a link.
Okay.
It will be one or the other.
Okay.
But it will be a private YouTube, it won't be like
Like
everybody in the world can
I
see it.
hope not.
Just you guys.
All right.
Yay! Thank you both so much.
Thank you for meeting with
And
us.
the big thing, it's an online class, and because I do give you a lot of free reign in the next unit, there won't be there are pros and cons, right? You have a lot of freedom, but you don't always have a lot of direction, and there's not necessarily as much contact with me. So that means that if you need something, you should contact me.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, so the more in touch you stay, the better it is. And I've not noticed there being a problem with you guys staying in contact.
Oh
Yeah,
no,
like-
we're fine.
Yeah, you've all already emailed me about issues, so I'm not concerned that you are afraid to email me.
All right.
I'm just gonna show up at your office.
And you can do that too, and I have those online office hours, and I have face-to-face office hours, and I make appointments, so I'm very open, just to let me know what you need. Okay?
Yeah, no problem.
All right,
Thank you.
bye.
Yeah, thank you.